The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to the Extended Disc webinar. Today's topic is reading key emotions in extended disc profiles. My name is Christina Bowser. I'm the training director here at Extended Disc, and joining me today is my colleague, Markku Kaupinen, president of Extended Disc.
Happy New Year, Christine, and Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been on vacation, so I don't think I've even seen Markku this year. So
Good to
Happy
see you.
New Year for sure.
Thank you.
So this is an interesting topic, and it's been overwhelming, the response, the number of people who are interested in this topic. And, you know, I'm always curious as to why. So I know when I do trainings, I always ask people, have you ever heard of key emotions in DISC profiles? Because a lot of our clients have used DISC assessments from other places. And I've never heard anyone say yes. So These are unique, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because, like you said, in reality, almost 100% of our clients use some form of DISC assessment in the past. If they like DISC, typically the chances are really good that they like extended DISC. And what we're talking about in this webinar, by the way, which will be recorded. And
I did.
Okay, good. So it's unique to extended DISC. And it really helps people to really, if they want to, they can dig deeper into understanding what really may be going on. A lot of times you will not touch these topics because you're doing training session for maybe 15 people. Mm-hmm. It's not appropriate to look into these things. And I think we dive into this content in a moment, people realize, hey, yeah, training session is not the right place to think about and talk about these things. But when you're helping someone, coaching someone, developing someone, mentoring someone, this can be very helpful. You can really begin to understand what might be some obstacle to success.
Right. And if you've heard Markku and I talk about in our previous webinars, anytime you have, any questions about a person's results, number one, you always need to ask, can I trust the results if you have them? But if you don't have the results, you always want to take a look at the profiles because they give you more information.
Yeah, so these profiles really provide some additional information about the person, some underlying feelings, some things that they may be experiencing at this time. There will be nothing in the report that will talk about these. As you know, Christina, since you conduct certifications almost every day, we spend some time on these underlying feelings to help people to understand how to visually recognize these, what they look like. And in fact, for our attendees today, try not to remember all of this. Kind of gives you an overview of what might be possible for you to interpret from the profiles. But what I find in practice is when people see them visually, they begin to recognize them, and then they look at their notes a couple of times, and then they really understand it. They own the information, how to use it, and it's not difficult at all.
In fact, what I tell people is don't even memorize them. We're going to show you how to recognize them. So you're going to look at, maybe different shapes of profiles, different sizes of profiles, but you don't have to memorize them. You just have to recognize, hey, something else might be going on, and then at that point, go to your resources.
Yeah, and we're really doing just a quick overview of this webinar. But one of the things I do want to mention is when we get these results and when the profiles could indicate some of these underlying feelings, I think it's important for us to note that it doesn't mean that those underlying feelings must be occurring right now, because one of the things we have built in extended disc is this validity check system. We want to be very sure that when we provide information, that we provide information that is valid. As you know, Christina, people really make some important decisions based on the information we provide. And if the validity is there, we just don't want to provide any information at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I just want to re-emphasize, if it didn't come across the first time, is these special situations are unique and specific to extended DISC profiles. And today, we're not going to be able to spend a lot of time, but we're going to give you an introduction overview to them. We love your questions. Unfortunately, again, in the interest of time, put them in the question section and we'll follow up after the webinar itself.
Yeah, and that's a very important point you made, is that this is specific to extended disc. First, that we are able to identify these things. And second is that the interpretations that and then we're going to give a couple of the most common one today, is that they are unique to extended disc. So if you are using something else, this will not be helpful and it's not going to be applicable.
Yeah, and really the bottom line to this is that it's just a way to be able to understand the results of of the extended DISC assessment more. It just gives you more information. It's a way to look deeper into the results.
That's right. So why don't we just jump in and look at
Okay.
let's look at the most common one first. And that is the one we call a tight profile one. So if you look at these profiles here, one of the things that we talked about this in a recent webinar is that the question number one we should always ask is that, can we trust the results? And that question really relates to profile two, that hardwired behavioral DISC style. In this example, profile two, the one on the right, has a nice, clear, wide shape. So we can be very certain this individual is a DI style, C style being the most challenging or least comfortable for this person. But now if we look at the profile one, we can notice that it's quite tight. And by tightness, we mean that all four DISC styles are very close to that middle line. Sometimes you can even see them all in being that highlighted neutral zone. And when we see this, it really means that the person at this time, at their present environment, they are not certain yet how to modify their behavior. And if the person is a new employee, that's almost something we expect to see, because I think all of us can relate to this. Is when we start a new job, it does take some time to really understand what the culture of the organization, the team I'm working in really are, and what the expectations of my boss are, and it takes some time to really understand those, and we almost expect to see them. However, if the person has been there for a longer period of time, let's say 3 or 4 more months, then typically that can indicate some problem that we may want to address.
Yeah, and for you techies out there who want to know why, what we're looking for in what we see in profile two, that, the results that we can trust, the tall graph line, what this person is clearly identifying over and over again is they are comfortable with the DI style, and S and C style take more energy. So the bigger the gap between, their natural style and the styles that are not natural, the more you can trust the results. But what's happening on profile one on the left is this person is not as clear in their answering pattern. They're essentially choosing a little bit of all four styles, which is what's causing that compression.
That's not really correct, because what profile one tells us is how the person perceives they need to adjust their DISC style in order to be successful in their present work environment. Mm-hmm. In this case, they really don't know if I should be D, I, S, or C. They're actually trying to be a little bit of everything. So that's why the key feeling there is uncertainty. It's really not, again, new employee, maybe a student. We tend to see it frequently. But if the person has been on the job for a few months, we may want to look deeper. And typically what I do, especially when we're dealing with a team, if several team members have these tight profile ones, they're feeling that uncertainty, typically the challenge is with their team leader, their supervisor, their boss, because it may be that he or she is not doing a very clear job and very good job in communicating what those goals and priorities are. So you may want to look for patterns there, because then you really are working on the true problem and not the kind of effects that you're seeing or symptoms that you're seeing.
Exactly. So let's look at another example. And in this case, we have a tight profile two, which is natural style. Again, you have that, this person, profile two, is much more compressed on the profile graph on the right, which means that the key emotion that typically ties to it is this sense of insecurity. However, we don't want to ever assume that.
That's absolutely correct. I don't ever want to go in a situation, nobody should go in a situation when you see even any of these situations, that because I see this kind of what I call special situation, is that this must be happening. It's simply an indication that this could be happening. In fact, when I see a type profile two, my first assumption is that they were simply distracted when they were completing the questionnaire. Not enough time, distractions, stressful day, and they were not able to focus. So that's my first assumption. However, what typically happens is when the person begins to look at their own result and they're nodding their head, and they give you that body language indicating, hey, this is me, then I feel more comfortable that one of these underlying feelings could be happening. And like you said, it's insecurity. Essentially, the person perceives that and feels that my future is not secure. Again, my future is not secure, and oftentimes could be issues that relate to their personal lives, going through a divorce, maybe a illness of a loved one, maybe they have some own health concerns, or maybe they have some financial concerns as well. A lot of times it could be personal type of a situation. Not always, could be professional as well. And of course, those are often intertwined.
Right.
Financial concerns, for example, maybe ultimately it's because they think that this company may not be able to provide me a long-term employment, for example. So typically it tends to be a little bit more fundamental issue than what we see in profile 1 being typed.
Okay, so we have another example. Instead of a type profile, we have what we call an example of a overshift of profile 1, where the entire graph line is above the line, or there are instances where it can be ascending, shifted up. So you want to talk about that?
Well, here again, I look at profile 2 first. Nice wide shape. I can trust the results. We're dealing with the DI individual. But when we look at the profile 1, that overshift, that ascending profile, essentially we are noticing that nothing is below that middle line. So really, it's indicating to us that the person perceives that in order for me to succeed in my present work environment, I have to be everything. Yeah. I can't let go of any of those behaviors. And frankly, it's not a sustainable long-term situation. So they're feeling overwhelmed. A lot of times they also use the word that I feel helpless. I cannot control my environment, and I'm trying to be everything, and I'm exhausted. And or the feeling of overwhelmness can sometimes be, pardon the pun, overwhelming. So they really cannot sustain it for a long time at all.
Right. So in this case, again, just summarizing, you can see the entire graph line of profile 1 is above the line. They're basically saying, I need to put it all out there. And as Markku said, there's no amount of energy in us to do it. So let's look at and see what happens when we have an ascending profile 2, natural style.
Yeah, now and if you look at profile 1 and 2, one way to kind of try to get your arms around it and understand what they really mean. Profile 1 is more of the environment. How do I adjust my style to the demands and expectations of my environment, typically work environment? Profile 2 is more of internal, who I am deep down, what I'm feeling in my core. So here this person perceives that at my core, who I really am, even there I can't let go of everything. I must do all those things, not only my personal life, but my professional life as well. So it's typically more fundamental challenge that the person has to overcome. I remember one quick story. This happened 20 years ago, at least. One of our clients called me and they had a situation like this, and I explained what happened, what the interpretation is, and that was pretty much it. But I happened to talk to the same person about 2 weeks later, and then I remembered that phone conversation for a couple of weeks ago, and I said, hey, by the way, what happened with that client? I was, oh yeah, he quit. I said, really? Why did he quit? Well, his official reason for quitting the organization was that he was burnt out. So again, not a sustainable situation, but it's more challenging to overcome than the one we see here on the left.
So again, these are just some of the examples of special situations. There are other ones. We always say to you as clients of Extended Disc, if you ever have a profile that you don't understand or just doesn't look quite right to you, reach out to one of our trainers, reach out to us, and we'll help you interpret it.
And of course, the certification, I know we spend a lot of time with this, Christina. So again, just kind of get a quick overview here. You may want to re-listen to this when the recording comes available in a few days and share it maybe with some of your other colleagues as well. But yeah, that's a great point. There are a couple of others, but these are the most common we see.
The takeaway, when people ask me, well, what do I do with these results? And, one of the things that Markku and I was telling them, these are valid results, but, they are valid results with what I call cautionary flags. If you understand what the situation is, again, like Markku said, if someone's new to their job, then maybe that type profile 1 makes sense. But if you don't understand what's going on and you need to, then it's an impetus for you to ask those open-ended questions. Deliver the results, and then say, how do you feel about that? Or does that describe you in your current work situation, something like that? Is there something you had said too, Markku?
Well, this is again something you don't gonna do in a training session with other people in a room. This is something that you tend to use on one-on-one situations after you have that rapport built and that trust built with that person. And by asking those open-ended questions, and I typically want to keep them in a work environment rather than the personal life things. I don't want to talk about what's happening at home that makes you feel this way, because that's just not a right way to do it.
Right.
My favorite question is, tell me, are there some changes taking place at work? It's a very non-threatening question, and now the person can decide whether or not he or she wants to talk about it. Typically, they do begin to talk about it, and they may say something like that. Not really at home, at work. However, I'm really concerned about my son's plans for college,
Right.
for example.
He is.
Yeah, just and don't again. Key thing here is that's a quick overview, and you don't want to assume and jump into conclusions. Just because you see these things doesn't mean it must be happening.
Right, and we must continue to identify the person's style as we understand more about them. Well, that was very quick. There's obviously a lot more information about that. Review this. I recommend you review this video. Reach out to us if you come across any of these special situation profiles. Thank you guys all for joining us today. Our next webinar is next week. It's a 1-hour webinar on step 1, which is what is DISC.
Yeah, and go to our website, extendeddis.org, and click on the events tab on the top toolbar, and you see some of the future webinars and other events. Even if you can't attend at the time that the webinar takes place, sign up, we'll send you the recording.
Exactly. Have a great day.
Thank you.